King Henry III built his rule on centralized autocracy, rejecting traditional baronial consensus to focus entirely on personal power and monumental state architecture. He funded this massive state apparatus through punitive taxation and the aggressive exploitation of Jewish debt bonds. In 1254, Henry executed a unilateral geopolitical gamble. He agreed to purchase the Kingdom of Sicily from the papacy for his second son, entirely without domestic financing. The bill came due rapidly. Pope Alexander IV demanded an immediate payment of £90,000 for the ongoing war effort, threatening Henry with excommunication if he defaulted. This chart shows the severe mathematical reality of the crisis. The £90,000 papal debt dwarfs the tiny fraction of the crown's standard annual income. Confronted with this impossible financial burden, the national treasury empties. The English crown is rendered totally insolvent. Henry III lost his absolute power to a textbook catastrophic sovereign debt crisis. In a desperate scramble for liquidity, the king attempted to extort the English clergy, forcing senior churchmen to sign blank financial charters promising unlimited sums. He extracted roughly £40,000 through this method, but the funds vanished immediately into the Italian war effort. The primary papal debt remained unpaid. As the treasury ran dry, the major barons refused to pass any new taxes to bail out the king. The English government ground to a total halt. With the state completely frozen, the papacy prepared to execute its threat, moving to completely delegitimize the English executive branch. Recognizing the crown as a failing enterprise, the major English barons secretly formed an alliance to forcibly intervene. In April 1258, a coalition of heavily armed barons marched into Westminster to carry out a bloodless coup d'état. By bankrupting the national treasury, the king exposed the English monarchy to a hostile corporate takeover. The king found himself paralyzed and isolated, surrounded by heavily armed barons in his own council chamber. The resulting agreement, the Provisions of Oxford, functioned as a strict corporate receivership. It stripped the king of his ability to appoint ministers. Executive power transferred to a 15-member baronial board, who seized control of the justiciar, chancellor, and treasurer. The board even took control of the royal household's lower servants and cooks. The king was effectively stripped of agency and treated as a legal minor. One foreign-born member of this 15-man board was Simon de Montfort. He quickly recognized the potential to seize control of the fractured state apparatus. Montfort pushed a radical agenda to place permanent limitations on the major barons themselves, immediately fracturing the ruling coalition. The baronial attempt to manage a sovereign default inadvertently created a power vacuum, setting the stage for a violent rogue executive. Montfort broke from the council and launched a military rebellion against the crown, initiating the Second Barons' War. To quickly build a rebel army, Montfort weaponized the crippling financial debts of the lesser English landowners. He directed targeted massacres of Jewish communities in Worcester and London. These were kinetic operations to access and destroy the archives, the locked wooden chests containing the official records of debt. The physical incineration of these financial records instantly purchased the military loyalty of heavily indebted knights who otherwise faced financial ruin. Montfort's early military coalition was built on the violent literal cancellation of private debt. At the Battle of Lewes, Montfort fractured King Henry and Prince Edward, effectively hijacking the crown. Despite holding the king, Montfort faced a critical logistical bottleneck. The traditional baronial power brokers refused to support or fund his rogue state. He occupied London with a mercenary army, but he had absolutely zero incoming tax revenue to pay them. The historic 1265 Parliament summons was an emergency financial pivot to bypass the hostile lords. With traditional baronial tax streams cut off, Montfort opened a new, direct pipeline by summoning knights from the shires and burgesses from the towns. This was a targeted demographic choice to tap the liquid silver of the urban middle class. The inclusion of commoners in Parliament was a desperate, pragmatic mechanism to extract capital for a rebel junta. Montfort's aggressive wealth accumulation soon alienated his remaining allies. Shortly after, Prince Edward escaped captivity. Edward counter-mobilized. He utilized massive baronial defections to cut off Montfort's supply lines, trapping the rebel army in the Welsh marshes. The physical reality of the fields of Evesham offered heavy rain, deep mud, and a severely depleted rebel army facing superior forces. Prince Edward issued an unprecedented operational directive. He entirely abandoned the medieval convention of capturing enemy nobles for lucrative ransoms. He formed a highly specialized 12-man royalist death squad embedded directly within his army. Their singular objective was to ignore the wider battle and systematically hunt down and dismember the rebel executive branch. The Battle of Evesham was a calculated, targeted assassination operation designed to liquidate a rogue government. The rebel leadership was kinetically dismembered on the battlefield. Montfort was hemmed in and killed by a fatal lance strike to the neck. The victorious royalists immediately began a systematic and frenzied mutilation of Montfort's corpse. They severed his head, hands, and feet, distributing the parts to his enemies across the country. It functioned as a deliberate, gruesome political broadcast. This visceral display was engineered to permanently terrorize any remaining rebels and restore the crown's absolute monopoly on violence. Once royal authority was restored, King Henry and Prince Edward kept Montfort's parliamentary structure. They recognized the unmatched efficiency of extracting wealth directly from the Commons. Parliament was built on sovereign bankruptcy, violent extortion, and the cold mechanics of state survival.